afternoon. I'm Norman Jorgensen, author of In Flanders Fields, a picture book illustrated by Brian Harrison Lever and published by Fremantle Press. And Fremantle Press have asked me to talk a little bit about it in honour of Anzac Day this year, one of the strangest Anzac days there's ever likely to be, and what Anzac Day means to me. But it's a particularly personal day for me, particularly personal. My grandfather, Donald Campbell, was served in the First World War in Flanders, and he lived to 66 years old, so I knew him. He was still alive when I was 10. We were close, and like everyone in those days, he never talked about the war. I hardly knew he'd even been involved in it until I started doing the research for In Flanders Fields, when I found his war record, and I found his brother William's war record. And William died on the very last day, on the 11th of November 1918, which would have been particularly tragic. And while doing the research, I came across a whole lot of other relatives, other great uncles, and I started writing the book, and I wasn't working. I couldn't get any heart into it, and I went to see my grandma, who was in old folks home at the time, and I said, I've been working on this for weeks, grand months, and I can't get to work. And she said to me, "Why don't you go to Flanders?" And I said, "I can't do that, Grand, it's a fortune." She said, "I'll pay for you if you like. It'll $500 be enough." And so I went to Flanders, and she said to me before I left, "Can you go and see if you can find Uncle William's grave, Uncle Will's grave?" And I didn't even know she had an Uncle Will. But anyhow, I went searching. I got onto the Commonwealth War Graves site, and I found the location of the grave and looked all over Flanders, over the many hundreds of thousands of graves that are there, which is the most sobering experience you can ever do. And I found it, much to my relief and great honour, because I was able to go back and I'll take photos and show them to my gran, and I've been the only person that ever visited him. And Fremantle Press have said, "What does Anzac mean to me? How am I going to celebrate it, or how and remember it this year?" But as I said, it's deeply personal. And when I was researching the book, I found far too many details about World War I, stuff you didn't want to know, and I can understand why the soldiers who came back never wanted to talk about it. They didn't want to upset their families. They didn't want to have to remember things that was horrific. And so I think I'll just quietly sit and remember that these people are very closely connected to me. My grandfather I was talking about, his brother, Uncle Will and Uncle Jim and Albert, and two others, only one hug away from my grandma, and who I used to hug all the time. And I think that is probably the way I can honour them the most, is by just contemplating what they might have gone through and how much those that got killed missed out on, and how it affected their families for generations to come. It's a deeply moving time. It always has been. But yeah, this year when everyone is suffering and in lockdown, I think it'll be particularly sad, more sadder than ever before, I think, because most people's emotions are really on edge at the moment, and this is the sort of thing that does it. My other book that I wrote, Jack's Island, again, is a very personal story. It's about my father, Jack, who was living on Rottnest during World War II, when the Australian government was worried about the Japanese invasion, and they set up Rottnest as a fortress, the big guns on the hills and barbed wire, and landmined all the beaches. My father and his brother went to live with their parents. Well, my granddad was working, my other granddad was working on the island. And even though it is set in World War II, it is mostly a Huckleberry Finn sort of story about two boys having adventures, but the threat of the Japanese invasion is always in the background. But being boys, they're not particularly worried. They're more concerned about their adventures. But again, it's about my family, and family is more important than anything, and so it is a pleasure and an honour to write about them. And it's a pleasure and an honour that Fremantle Press actually published them. I've been really thrilled. They've both been long-standing books. A lot of students have to study Jack's Island in school, and Flanders Fields is just about in every school in Australia, which is absolutely wonderful. And they both keep getting reprinted year after year. So thank you, Fremantle Press, and all the best to you on Anzac Day, and all the best to you. Thanks for joining me in the trenches. Thank you.